Well, hey, Great Lakes Church. My wife, Rindy, and I, we moved to Kenosha 15 years ago. And when we moved, we had a really, really big dream in our hearts, but we had no people and no resources. Now, the reason we had such a big dream was because we grew up in the Midwest, right? I grew up in Southeast Wisconsin. I've lived in both Kenosha and in Racine. Rindy grew up in Rockford, so less than 2 hours away. And we showed up with this really big dream. And quite honestly, it's a little arrogant to say it was our dream, because really it's God's dream. It's really a reflection of the heart of God. And that was to start a church for people who do not go to church, for people who are jaded by church, for people who, for whatever reason, feel really distant from God. But we moved and we started sharing this with other people and realized there's a whole lot of other people that carry that dream. And people started coming together and we just went after it. We just started chasing it. Now, we love weekly services, we love groups, but that's not the way we did it. We did it by just dedicating and focusing ourselves on finding ways to saturate our homes and our neighborhoods and our communities with the good news of Jesus. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for sacrificing your time, your energy, your resources to make Great Lakes Church a reality and just to bring this dream to life. It's just overwhelming when you think about it. Over the past 15 years, we've seen more than 1,000 people surrender their lives to Jesus, and more than 1,000 people get water baptized. We've met in 17 different locations. All right, it's driven me crazy, but whether it's weekly services or worship nights or special events, 17 different locations over the last 15 years. We've bought land, we purchased a facility. Currently, we're leasing a facility for our Kenosha campus. In addition to that, we've hosted a prom for several years for kids for kids with special needs. We launched a camp for kids in foster care. We've welcomed thousands of children and students into our weekly programs. It's just been a wild ride, right? In addition to that, Rindy and I have had the honor to walk alongside so many of you in seasons of loss, or as you've navigated the challenges of parenting or marriage, as you've just tried to figure out what it looks like to follow Jesus. You've invited us and included us in your journey. I've also had the pleasure of officiating more weddings than I can count. As a church, we've helped launch many, many churches. We've partnered with organizations that would take me all day to list that are incredible organizations which really help us evidence the love of Jesus here, near, and far. And I just want you to know that Rindy and I are incredibly grateful for you. We're incredibly proud of you, and we're incredibly proud of what we've been able to accomplish together. This has been, without question, the greatest honor of our lives. But our season of being lead pastors of Great Lakes Church is coming to an end. Now, the only reason Rindy's not with me and not on camera is she doesn't do cameras. All right? On occasion she might, but she just says, I don't do cameras. Now, as you can imagine, when we started Great Lakes Church, it required lots of sacrifice. It required lots of risk to just launch in and do it. And we were willing to do it. And the reason why is we saw ourselves here 25, 30, maybe 35 years. But 15 years into this journey, we feel like our part and our role that God would have us play has been done. And so our season is coming to an end. And I'll just give you a quick little synopsis of what's happened and what's brought us to this point. All right, so 20 years ago, I was on staff at an incredible church in San Diego, and the executive pastor of the church was my boss. His name was Ben Sigmund. Ben eventually left that church in San Diego. He moved to Seattle to be the lead pastor of Timberlake Church. All right. And so over the past 15 years, Ben has invited me many, many times to speak at Timberlake. I speak there 7, 8, sometimes 10 times a year. I'm actually on their website as one of their teaching pastors. Well, 9 months ago, in November of 2022, Pastor Ben and the board of Timberlake Church, they reached out and they extended an invitation for me to join their team. And initially I thought, man, I think God is in this. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'd been restless for several months. But as Rindy and I wrestled with that decision, eventually we decided we need to close that door. And so we closed it. And then over the past several months, as that door seemed to open from time to time, we just closed it. And we kept closing it until eventually it was clear this door is closed forever. And then last week, Pastor Ben called me again. And he said, Dave, I think this door, might be open again. He said it really is up to the board, but I think it is open again. Now, like all of you, I wrestle with trying to figure out what is the will of God, right? What is God trying to say? And I was sick to my stomach. I felt like I was going to vomit, but something in me and something in Randy just felt like, you know what? This is what God would have for us in this next season. And so I need you to know we're not running from anything, but we do feel like God is calling us to Timberlake Church in this season. And so on October 1st, I'm going to be stepping down as the lead pastor of Great Lakes Church and joining Timberlake Church as the co-pastor. Now, I want to say this because I know so many of you love Great Lakes Church. You've dedicated so much of your time and energy and resources to it. You're obviously going to be concerned about the future. And I just want to say, if you are excited about having a church like Great Lakes in Southeast Wisconsin, you love this idea of having a church for people who don't normally go to church, if you're still passionate about our vision of saturating our homes and our neighborhoods and our communities with the good news of Jesus, if you still want to be a part of a church that cares for the poor and advocates for the overlooked and equips healthy marriages and prepares the next generation and starts new churches, I'm just going to ask you to stay engaged. I'm going to ask you to pray. I'm going to ask you to attend. I'm going to ask you to serve. I'm going to ask you to give generously. And I'm going to ask you to be the loudest voice of encouragement for our board of directors as they lead the church through this season. Now, at Great Lakes Church, we have never tried to be the most innovative and original and trendy church in America. That's great, and if that happened, I'm fine with that. Nothing wrong with those things, but that's not been what's driven us. What's driven us year after year is the good news of Jesus. And that's why for 15 years, every time we've encountered a challenge, every time we've been met with a hurdle, every time that we've seen some sort of difficulty in front of us, we just kept moving forward. Because the good news of Jesus is that good. And it's that motivational, it's that inspiring, and it's that powerful. And some of you have heard me say this more than 100 times by now, but the good news of Jesus is actually not a religious message. It's an anti-religious message, right? Because religion is always going to be about me and what I do. It's going to be about my discipline and my obedience and my sacrifice and my faithfulness and my improvement and my commitment. Am I getting better? Am I sinning less? Am I giving enough? Am I doing enough? Am I loving enough? But the good news of Jesus, which was beautifully displayed on the cross, is that it's not about us and what we can do for God. It is about God and what God has done for us. It is about his sacrifice and his faithfulness and his devotion to us. And the message displayed on the cross and validated by the resurrection is that God is constantly meeting our failures with his forgiveness and our messiness with his mercy, and our weakness with his strength, and our guilt with his grace. And the reason I bring this up is because as we grow in our understanding of who Jesus is and what Jesus has accomplished, what happens is it chisels away at our heart and our mind and our desires, and over time, it impacts the trajectory of our life. It is the kindness of God that draws us to repentance. And I remind you of that because as Great Lakes Church moves forward, my prayer is that this will continue to be a church that is all about Jesus. And it's all because of Jesus, and it's all through Jesus, and it is all for Jesus. His grace, his mercy, his love, his forgiveness is the foundation for everything we do. And so as we move forward, the board of directors has asked Josh Peterson, who is brand new to our staff, they've asked Josh to step in as the interim lead pastor. And so he's agreed to step into that role beginning October 1st. And I just want you to hear it from me. I couldn't be more excited. In the times now that I've hung out with Josh, I have grown to appreciate him and love him and to respect him. Now, if you're like, oh, I see what's happened. You started working behind the scenes, Dave, and you were trying to get all the pieces in place so that you could go to Seattle. I'm telling you, I'm not that smart, all right? I'm not that smart. As far as I was concerned, the door to Timberlake had been permanently closed, but I do believe that God has opened it again, and so that's the direction we're headed. Now, there's a lot more that needs to happen. There's a lot more that we need to do as a church, But Rindy and I feel like we have been faithful to doing what God has called us to do. And so now it's time to pass the baton of leadership. And I just want you to hear this. Rindy and I love you so much. Our closest friends are part of Great Lakes Church. We live in one of the greatest neighborhoods in America. We love our neighborhood. Thank you for loving us. And thank you for loving our family. And thank you for allowing us to be your pastors and for trusting us. I'm excited about the future, and I really do believe the best is still to come.